As a quick preface, I was going through editing the video and I noticed that the audio was kind of choppy on the OBS recording. So if I drag it in here, you can see it looks kind of bad there. That's not good. So rather than re-record the video because I can't exactly reflash like Unleashed, we're going to go through it like this. So for like the last week as of this recording, basically from Saturday, I'd been using the flipper a little bit off and on for a couple different things, and it's been really kind of one of those. It's been interesting. So, going over it, you've got a bunch of different things like the bad USB stuff, which is basically Ducky script for the flipper, and it emulates a keyboard, like a couple other different things that I'd noticed. Some of the sub-gigahertz stuff were kind of weird. I should be shifting over to the desktop here soon to like show things off. I've had issues even with Unleashed trying to get the U2F token functionality to work. So I don't know what's up with that. I haven't quite figured it out. Obviously, it's kind of hard to see the screen with an overhead camera. So we're going to go to the desktop, plug in the flipper, and look at it from here. So this is the part where I'm basically going through the functionality of the flipper and what it does, because it's really easy to see what is going on the screen here. So I've recorded some sub-gigahertz stuff already with the flipper before re-flashing it. I've got the NFC stuff, and this is now my universal amiibo with all kinds of different amiibo things to mess with in Skyrim. You've obviously got your bad USB scripts. I've downloaded some, and I wrote my own to test it out. And we're just going to ignore like this part because I like wigged the thing out. And so it just kept on scrolling on me. Once I move on to the next screen, you can see. So all I did was unplug it, really. But the bad USB is a really cool thing because I ended up writing my own script for it. I believe I show it off here in a second. Going back to it, let's see. USB I button. I don't have any I buttons as of yet. They are pretty cheap. So that is something. What's really cool is these different apps that they have. So these are obviously ones that I installed myself. This key measure one, literally you take any key that is like a 5-pin key, you place it onto the screen, line it up with that notch, and then you just notch down each part as you go. And then you can save this key for later so that you can like file it down wherever it's at. So it's a pretty cool utility, and it's actually pretty quick. So if you get a hold of someone's key, you can get a measure on it in a pretty short amount of time. Like, you don't even need a minute to figure it out if you can nail it down just right. The RFID detector is really cool. It basically tells you whether a like door lock or some sensor or something is RFID or NFC. So you can go through it and be like, hey, am I going to be using NFC to read this or RFID? Because I am just not sure. Obviously, the flipper has a few games in it and things that way. Oh, you can see the ones I installed, obviously. Unleashed comes with quite a few more. Now, this is the cool part. The flipper has this JavaScript API that you can use to program everything, from bad USB to accessing sub-gigahertz and things like that. And on the forks of the firmware, it's more so that they've got more of that. So with those scripts, the scripts it comes with are examples of things you can do with it. So you can access the bad USB API and its dialog API and write these scripts to do more complicated things than you could do with, say, just a bad USB script. So you could control when you're executing things or going on to the next thing because of this JavaScript API. You can see here, you've got your notification being called in, your bad USB, your basic Flipper stuff, and your dialog stuff. And it goes through and you can set everything up to like your bad USB, ID, device ID that's going to show up, and a whole bunch of other things interacting with the UART, loading stuff, and so on. So these are just example scripts. Unleashed has a few more because it expands the API quite a bit, but yeah. Infrared remotes, I've experimented with the infrared a little bit. Sub-gigahertz weather station. I've got a weather station here that it works really well with. In this example, I didn't have my flipper close enough to the weather station to pick it up. So, but I can see like the temperature, wind speed, humidity on it, and it's pretty nifty what it can do. Haven't had much chance with RFID stuff. NFC, there's a number of custom things. Unleashed comes with a couple other NFC apps that let you do way more in making your own NFC tags. Here's the infrared stuff. I've messed around with the universal remote. My TV's still, one of my TVs, the CRT one, still isn't in the database, which is kind of sad. I don't have the remote for it, and it would be really nice to have the remote or a remote because the buttons on the unit itself are kind of wonky. So here, to manually update the flipper or to install custom firmware, it's actually a really simple process. You just click that install from file and you find your firmware file, the TGZ that the flipper uses, and then you just click install. It goes through the process here, like all the way through it, and shows you it. It'll show you on the screen, it'll flip over to it. And so the Unleashed firmware is what I'm currently running right now. And it comes with a couple different things that are really nice over it. I liked the default firmware for what it can do. And sticking with it for a week, it's like, yeah, it's still kind of useful with the original firmware. Luckily, the original firmware is open source, so people have been able to take and fork it and unlock a lot of it, which is really nice because, for example, with the sub-gigahertz apps, you have more fine-tuned switching of channels that you can do with it. And so, for example, the ceiling fan, with the remote, I can now clone it more easily because it has more access to the stuff within the range of frequencies that it can already access. So I can detect it, I can nail it down, I can record stuff, and now I've got multiple different recorded signals for the fan to turn it off, turn it on, turn the speed up, turn the speed down, turn the fan blades off themselves, and so on. So this is just kind of an overview of what the repository says. So you've got your sub-gigahertz stuff, rolling codes functionality. This means like your garage door remotes, it should have more compatibility for that. It's got a couple more sub-gigahertz apps. The sub-gigahertz remote is actually really nice because you can take these saved recorded signals and map them to individual buttons on the Flipper Zero, and all of a sudden you've got like 5 different signals you've got access to at a press of a button. Then your infrared, it adds a couple more remotes and actually tells you how many different signals it's rolling through. The NFC RFID iButton stuff, it's added a couple different things like adding stuff manually, your own, adding custom NFC tags, NFC parsers, a couple more programmed into it, and fuzzers. So the fuzzers mean that you can, do cool stuff with it. Let's see. So other quality of life stuff. I haven't changed the flipper name. Clock on the desktop. This is actually really nice because, again, you can see the time. If you have the flipper on your bedstand as a clock, you can actually see the time on the home screen when it's locked now. The battery percentage display, it's got different battery options. So you've got a segmented one rather than just the bar or the percentage maybe. The bad USB, bad KB is really cool because it both does Bluetooth and USB emulating keyboards and other inputs. And then dummy mode adds, they have more options for shortcuts on dummy mode. Locking the device with a regular pin, kind of a couple better security things, but the bad KB is one that I'm kind of like, seems really cool. And then the keyboard layouts as well on the bad USB end. So your keyboard layouts are larger, you've got more functionality with Bluetooth and messing around with stuff like that. And then added sub-gigahertz protocols, which somewhat kind of works. I had to go in and manually record in the raw recording stuff in order to get my fan properly mapped up. So I do kind of lament that the recording stuff could be a little bit better as detection goes, but it is what it is. I'm not going to complain too much. So yeah. Again, dummy mode, going back to that, I don't remember why. I did this like a couple days ago. You can see Saturday up here, and once the video quits, it's going to show you Monday otherwise. But so yeah, Unleashed firmware, I'm going to stick with this for a week from, I guess, Saturday, and then I will update to another firmware fork, which expands on what Unleashed does. I've already kind of picked it out because, one, it's going to be stable still like Unleashed. Two, it's going to have more functionality and open up a bit more than Unleashed does. And I've still got to experiment with the Unleashed scripting stuff. So that's going to be pretty cool. So again, I had to do kind of this do-over because the choppiness. And yeah. If you liked the content, if you enjoyed it, if you think I deserve it, like, comment, subscribe, leave any criticisms you have or what have you. I appreciate it. Feed that algorithm, like I said, and I will see you guys in the next one.